everybody. This is Brett Ingram. This is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Mitch Carson, celebrated professional speaker and closer who's spoken on stages in 63 countries, produced over 2,000 live events. He's been a home shopping network pitchman and can sell anything, craft a unique message around any product, person, or event. I'm super excited about this because everyone in any kind of business can use to learn how to sell more effectively. So, with that, welcome, Mitch, and thanks for joining us.
Well, Brett, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share with you and your group of listeners.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I got a ton of stuff I want to ask you, but I have to start off a little bit with your background because I'm really curious. What did you do to start your career before you became, what you are today?
I didn't, it wasn't a straight line. I had this conversation earlier today with someone. How did you end up where you are today? I didn't have the grade school or even high school dream of being a fireman, a policeman, a lawyer, or a doctor. I was so uncertain about what I wanted to do. Where I am today was not even a dream. It wasn't even a passing thought. It happened through a series of events in life. And I was chatting with this other individual sharing, I wonder what my life would have been like had I become a fireman. What they do is quite credible, respectable, noteworthy. They have a tremendous retirement plan. I think they're forcibly pushed out the door at age 55, if I'm not mistaken. I think that might vary based on the state they're in. And they get a respectable pension, and nobody disrespects or looks down on firemen. It's a great deal. And one of my former students, young fella, became a fireman up in Seattle. And I said, and he said, "Well, what are you doing now?" And I said, "I'm still running an entrepreneur, and I did this business. I had to transition a little bit because of the pandemic, which shut down my live events business, which was a very big part of my revenue for many years, and I couldn't operate. We were obviously I was I was manacled like everybody in that industry." And I shared with him, I said, if I could turn back the clock, I doubt I'd want to be a police officer. And an attorney would have been nice, possibly, but who knows what kind of indigestion I would have suffered. And I didn't have a good leaning towards sciences, so a doctor would have been out, but a fireman, I think, would have been cool. I said, if I could turn back the clock, it might have been a nice profession because you're respected, you're paid well, seemingly well. I mean, you can make more, obviously, as an entrepreneur, but you're paid well to start a family, comfortable life. You work 3 days in a row, then you're off for 4. Wow. And they make over 6 figures most of the time. And depending where you are in the country, that could be good money. In New York, it's not a lot of money, or in LA, it's not a lot of money. You're just above the poverty line. But in most circumstances, it's good. So I didn't have that. I have been focused, mostly business fascinates me. Ideas fascinate me. The idea of taking a grain of sand and building it into a sea of sand is exciting. The idea of taking lemons into lemonade, all of that. And now we're in this evolving digital marketplace. I came from the physical goods background, and I worked with inventors. I started my first business. I would have to say I was an independent contractor, not an employee. I was an independent contractor at age 10 as a paper boy, because you weren't employees of the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, which was a newspaper. I rolled it up, folded it twice, put a rubber band around it, stuck it in my bag that hung over my Schwinn bicycle on both sides on the rack that I had in the back. And I went door to door through the hills of Encino, California, and was flicking the newspaper onto the porch for all of these wealthy people that I served as their paper boy. So I worked independently, and I had to go and collect the money. We were the collection agents for the monthly subscriptions back then. It wasn't a bill in the mail. we as paper boys had to go collect the money. And I remember it was a big deal when I got a 10-cent tip, 10 cents for delivering the paper for a month. Somebody gave me $1 once. I thought, wow, I bragged to my mom. At 10 years old, that was a big deal. And that was a form of entrepreneurship because I was an independent contractor. I worked 7 days a week doing this. It was every day. And I had to show up every day at 3:30. They dropped off the stack of newspapers. I had to cut the tie, roll them up, stick them in the bag, and off I went on my bicycle. And I think I made about $1 a day, or maybe a little bit more, maybe $30, $35 in a month. And that was my first entrepreneurial venture at 10 years old. And at 10 years old, I don't want to disclose exactly how old I am, but that was a lot then. It's
Yeah.
not much now. I think kids are spoiled, but I developed some strong legs pedaling my Schwinn bicycle to go and deliver these papers every single day, putting it on the porch. So I think it taught me, I got the physical exercise, but it taught me discipline, focus, and working for myself. Yes, I had a supplier that gave me the newspapers. I went and delivered it, but it was my business. And that's what started it. I didn't do the
Very cool.
lemonade stand. Yeah, I didn't do the lemonade stand, but I learned the importance of selling because I then was told, knock on the door next to the house that isn't getting the newspaper, ask them if they wanted a subscription to expand your route. So it's a matter of leveraging what you're already doing. These were lessons that were already popped into my head at age 10. Ask for referrals. Well, the Goldsteins next door are getting the newspapers. How about you, Mr. Smith? Don't you want it? It's only $10 a month, whatever the price was. It was very inexpensive. I forgot. Newspapers were a dime back then. And here, I can deliver it because they're right there. We are encouraged to do that. The house on one side and the house on the other. And then you do that with each location if you want to make money. And you did this after you delivered your newspapers and you were collecting your money every month, which you then had to turn over to the man that distributed the newspapers. So I learned selling, I learned discipline, and my income went up when I had more people on the route that I was already serving. So why would it be hard to drop it off at 123 Main Street and then 1234 Main Street? Right there. Easy. So I learned valuable lessons at an early age. It's like expand, work with the existing clients, leverage their trust to get the other client because they know the Goldsteins that are next door, so the Smiths are an easy candidate. So that was my first venture, my first job at age 10.
That's fascinating. I actually was a paper boy as well. The two
Mm.
differences are I didn't roll my papers up. I actually drove up the driveways, but I was in a very middle class neighborhood where it was easy just to drive up to the door and drop it on the
Oh, you
door.
were over
Yeah.
16 then.
I was, I think when I started it, I was 11 or
So you were
12.
on a bicycle as well.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And then same idea. We had to pay for the papers. They would deliver them. You cut the tie, all that
Yep.
stuff. I had the big bag. I put it on my bike. And the other difference is I didn't actually solicit the other houses. They never told me to do that. So that's interesting because I had two different paper routes at different times on streets that were sort of parallel to each other. And each one, I mean, most of the houses got them, but there were some who didn't. And I never spoke to them about it. So I missed that lesson, but I got some of the other ones. So that's really cool.
Well, the
Um,
discipline of doing that every day, and if you're on your bike and you're pedaling, you develop, some fitness at an early age and responsibility, and you get to have your own money.
yeah. And at that age, there's not a lot of other things you could do to do that. So it definitely sort of gets that sort of those gears turning. So okay, so you obviously got started in sales really young. How did that transition into speaking and mentoring as you got older?
Well, the speaking came about later. The sales part I got into because it was compulsory. I didn't know that it was a fearful experience. I just did it without the knowledge of, oh, sales is hard or sales is difficult and, you got to be tough. I never heard that dialogue. It didn't pollute my mind at that age. I just did it simply because I was asked to do it and an adult told me to do it. So I was, I guess, somewhat of a good kid, obedient at that age, and I did it because I was told to do it. All right. And I didn't have fear. Fear is learned in many cases.
Yeah.
And that kind of fear, now maybe not of a growling dog, with baring its teeth. I think that is our natural instincts to come out, but the fear of people wasn't there. I knocked on the door. Okay, we were friendly. This was, 1970. So now you know how old I am. I did this because we were in an affluent / middle class area. Most of the people I delivered to were in homes. There were a few apartments that I had to go up to the porch and deliver it or do some, different methods in order to accommodate them. But most were homes. And maybe with some long driveways, I had to insert it. And it was a great learning experience. I'm sure I look on it fondly. I look back on it fondly. It was not a negative experience. It taught me. And when I look at some of the kids today, they're 18 and have never had a job. You spoiled. How are you going to train somebody that's already not into it? They can do this with their thumbs, but they can't work. So it taught good value. So after that particular job or that entrepreneurial venture at age 10, as you can relate to, Brett, I then worked in a supermarket called Ralph's in Los Angeles, which came later as a box boy. Then I became a checker. Then I became a store, a clerk in the middle of the night while I was going to college. And I found that was reliable, but my money got ceilinged. And then when I went to college, I wasn't making enough money. It took me 8 years to get my degree because I worked part-time. I was working at the market. I was teaching martial arts, which was my hobby. I was teaching Taekwondo. And then I was introduced to selling promotional products to fraternities and sororities, imprinted T-shirts, hats, mugs, paddles, all these things that fraternities bought. And that's where I got into my first business, which was doing a little over $1 million after the third year of doing it or running it. And I then had employees and I had other salespeople, and I created this out of scratch or from scratch. And it was a great experience. So how did I get into the speaking side? In 1983, at the age of 22, was it 1983? 22, my parents died back to back, 5 weeks apart. And I say that it was obviously a tough time. I was an only child. And I then went on a downward spiral of drugs and alcohol. I found that I wanted to live. In June 30 of 1984. I had an epiphany. Let's just say an awakening or something happened where I decided at that point I'm never going to drink or use again. And I got involved in recovery. And that's been my path now for over 40 years. And through that path of learning from other people who were there to help me, they gave to me when I couldn't help myself. Once I learned how to take care of myself, it then became my privilege, not obligation, my privilege to pay it forward and help other people. Big distinction there. In the beginning, I was told you got to be of service. You got to help other people. I didn't want to. I felt selfish. Once I started doing it, then I had an aha moment. Then it became more and more frequent. Today, it is my gift to myself is being able to help other people. Maybe it's maturity, maybe it's old age, or maybe in fact that's the evolution of a human being as you become a little bit more spiritually based and wanting to help other people. It's a good feeling when you're able to let people see things that they're not capable of seeing at a certain juncture in their lives. And that's how I got into speaking, because I was asked to speak and share my story, how I overcame my drug addiction and alcoholism. Then that turned into money at some point, where I got asked to speak because I had to make money, and I started this business. And then I was asked to speak about it to an audience, and then I got paid to do it. And I thought, well, I'm on to something here. I like it. I can now sell one to many versus one to one. And that whole world opened up to me, and that's been my path for over 30 years, selling one to many. One to one no longer interests me.
That's amazing, and I have to touch on something so there was somebody that invested in you, that believed in you,
Yep.
even though you were in a point in your life when you were down. And I have to tell you, the number of people that I talked to where that is a common thread, it's amazing to me, because there's no question about the butterfly effect of all of that. There are so many people out there that have a service mentality, a giving mentality, and when you talk to them, you realize at some point in their life they were down, they were out, and somebody said, as people would say, I didn't even deserve it, but somebody believed in me anyway and said, listen, I think you've got potential. I think there's something that you could do that's greater than what you're doing with yourself right now. Let's do this. Let's get. And when somebody does that, the power that that has on another human being, to know that somebody believes in you and wants the best for you, is just remarkable. It's astounding to me. So it's a fascinating story. And I think that once you have a story to tell, the speaking part of it, makes a lot of sense, because you got something compelling that people want to hear. So that's an amazing trajectory, though. So I know the fields that you're in, though, public speaking, sales, all these things, they're pretty competitive. But you've had clients like Mark Victor Hansen, Dan Kennedy. You've shared
Mhm.
the stage with some of the most recognizable people in the world. How did you become so successful with it?
I failed a lot in the beginning, and I was willing to accept that failure and work through it, because pain causes change. Pain opens the door to opportunity. And if you're willing to get punched in the nose and then pick yourself up and move forward and be willing to get kicked in the jaw, then you may be eligible to consider yourself a champion of opportunity. And you have to endure some pain. And nobody failed more than I did. I was terrible in the beginning. Then slowly something happened. One day I became pretty good. I recognize it when people started to compliment. I really liked what you just shared today. I thought, me? Really? Self doubt diminished? Wow, I don't suck anymore. And it's a learned skill. Now, personality is important. I'm told I'm humorous when I take the stage. I have the ability to use wit and humor, which took time. That's a more advanced technique or method to connect with an audience. I don't recommend it for people in the beginning unless they're truly funny. Humor takes time. Get your content down, get your delivery down, understand the pain points of your audience and you being the solution, and keep them entertained. There are a lot of mechanical no-nos and mechanical do's that are necessary to be effective in a live in-person environment, and then also via webinars or live streaming. Those are different skill sets. Most overlap, however.
Yeah, that's interesting. Really interesting. But I think, again, it's amazing to me. You never gave up, right? So even though you were doing it, you stuck with it. You tried to make adjustments, and then you found something that worked, and then you built on that. So having the acuity to realize what you're getting as a result and then make those adjustments that you need to make, is obviously a testament not just to your character, but to your perseverance and drive for that. So lots of entrepreneurs out there are trying to build their brand. They're trying to grow their sales. There's tons of different techniques and tactics. Everybody wants more exposure. Social media seems like the first place that people turn. I'm curious what your take is on social media for branding and marketing.
Oh, at one point, I would have wished it to go away. Today, you can't ignore it. I think for depending on the industry you're in and your age group and where your clients live, where do they live? Let's say people of my age are going to not necessarily watch TikTok unless they're amused by it. After a while, you might get bored of clantily, or dressed young ladies shaking their booties and exposing themselves. All right, that's cute for a while. You look at a few of them and then pass them along to your buddies, and then you're kind of done. I'm done. I don't have any time or interest in TikTok anymore. It was cute in the beginning. I got bored. I live inside LinkedIn. YouTube, I pay attention to. Facebook is where I advertise if I want to fill events. Instagram goes together with that. I think is important. I don't play with Pinterest so much. I understand it's valuable. Can't do all things. I know it's great for certain people. I just don't know it, so I can't really comment. Podcasting is now very important. It used to be the stepchild, but it is very important. I believe radio, when utilized correctly, is valuable. It's regional. It depends where your audience exists and who you're targeting. I'm still a very big fan of network television because it's top of the food chain in terms of credibility.
Yeah.
So I'm a TV show host for NBC here in Las Vegas, and I interview experts on my show, and I air it at different times, usually on Sundays for 30 minutes. And that's a high-level platform to broadcast. It's local to Las Vegas, so it's not seen in New York or in your city where you are. Where are you again? I forgot.
I'm in Connecticut. Yeah, so
You're in
I'm
Connecticut.
basically a suburb of New York. A lot of people work in New York from where I live, so I'm on the
Which
southern
city?
coast of. I'm in Fairfield.
Oh, okay. All right. I've
Yep.
been all through that. I used to go to Stamford quite often.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Stanford's right down the road.
Yeah, right off the 95. So
That's
I
it.
know the
Yeah.
area. Yeah, many commuters into Connecticut, which is very beautiful. It's a very beautiful state. Expensive, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of, you have your regional television shows there. Today, people under 30 might ask, TV, I've never watched it. They understand YouTube. They understand Netflix or Roku or some of the other. But their parents and people with money and the capacity to pay still understand and respect television. When the debates ran, it's not on a YouTube channel. It's not on Roku. It's on NBC. It's on CNN. So the credibility is still there. It might change in 10 years from now. Who knows where it all will be. But for now and for the foreseeable future, network television is still the big daddy, most respected platform, in my opinion. And you need to embrace, I wouldn't do a podcast at one time.
Yep.
I thought that's beneath me. I'm a former CBS radio show host. I have a show on NBC television. The idea of a podcast, that'll ruin my brand. This is what I thought, and I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I have since corrected and realized, oh no, this is here to stay and it's growing, and I get it because people consume, because I read statistics and trends, much like audiobooks are much more heavily consumed than written books today.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People will listen to an audiobook, and only 9% of the sales of books are audio based, but they're consumed up to a level of about 95%. Whereas,
Yeah.
let's say 90% roughly of book sales are physical or ebooks, 5% get consumed. So if you crunch the numbers, audiobooks outpace physical books in terms of total consumption. So
That's
so
remarkable.
then that understanding that statistic, and I get it as a multi-book author, wow, podcasts are only going to get more and more popular. I better embrace this. So I had since shifted. Very
Fascinating.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I was an anti, and this is ironic because I was an anti social media guy myself, kind of a private person. So I didn't want to share a lot of things out there. But interestingly, I worked in technology. I mean, the business that I ran, we made software to do things like automate social media. I didn't even
Oh,
use it because
right.
I didn't want to do it myself, and it's not that I didn't believe in the product, it's that I didn't want to be on social. And then, I've also come around and realized, okay, there's a value, and it's not just about sharing pictures of the steak that you had for dinner last night. There's actual other value there. You can connect with people. But the reason for me, I started a podcast is because I like the depth. I find a lot of the social media stuff to be very, disposable. It's quick and then it's over. And so there's a need for that. There's a value for that. But I like the fact that, we can get on and we can have a real conversation and, probe the depths of things as opposed to just, hey, here's a soundbite or here's this or here's that. And so, yeah, so I'm with you there. I think it's sort of necessary at this point also. So public speaking, despite being people's greatest fear other than death on average, is obviously theoretically a great way to build your brand. What are the key traits that you think a highly successful professional speaker has?
I'll let me define traits. How about what kind of plumage they have in their feathers if they're going to be a peacock? A
Okay, I like
successful
that.
speaker. Let's assume you and I are equally talented on the stage. We are both AI experts, hypothetically, Brett. Okay. We're there. Oh, no, let's make it a little more personal. Let's say we both came up with a podcast program. You teach people how to podcast, how to be an effective guest, how to be an effective host. I have a product, how to be an effective guest, how to be an effective host. The difference between us, you have a 500 episodes, I have a 500 episodes. Our downloads are about the same. All of our metrics are at parity. Here's the difference. Oh, and your speaking ability and my speaking ability are also matched.
Okay.
All right. We're equally good looking. We're equally charming. All of this, assuming, let's just, two people, it doesn't have to be you or me.
Sure.
Those two people are equally matched. Here's the differentiator, and here's where the one with the most beautiful feathers will get the female peacock. The speaker who makes more money is the one who has a book or books, a series of books. That's number one. Number two, that speaker has a good following on YouTube. So we talk about and LinkedIn and LinkedIn. Those are the two important ones. And now, also Instagram, depending on the audience.
Mhm.
Third, who's been published in newspapers, magazines, and has done network television interviews. Even if you're a slightly better speaker, you're better looking, you're funnier. If I've got all this media and books around me, whose program do you think they're going to buy? Yours or mine?
Yeah, they're going to buy yours.
Right. And that is, and speaking of a speaker, addressing that question as a speaker, let's just talk about the simple keynote speaker, not even the selling speaker, which is my forte. And I've keynoted as well. I've emceed events. I've run panels. I've done everything. I've done trainings. I've done everything in the speaking industry. And I teach all of those modalities to people, how to be effective in each of those. The one who makes the most money has the most feathers. Full stop. Who's got the most beautiful plumage behind him? He will get the bigger deal. Who's packaged in a Tiffany box versus a box from Target? If you hand a ring, are you married?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back in time when you were going to propose to your wife. You get down on one knee, you pull out behind your back, you have it hidden. There's this little box, and it's in blue and white paper with blue and white bow, which denotes Tiffany. The answer you're going to get is a screaming, exuberant yes. More than likely, if she loves you, already have the signals that she's going to say yes. However, you reach from the other side and you pull out the box, and it's in red paper with zeros on it from Target. I don't know your wife. Maybe she's not materialistic or affected. Don't know. She's in Connecticut, so possibly she is going to be aware of brand distinction. The diamond is the same thing. They're both 2-carat rings, beautiful. You really exceeded, went out there. You got a 2-carat ring. It's got great visibility. It's on a nice setting. All this, blah blah blah. You know, princess cut. But one's wrapped like Tiffany. She's going to think you spent your 401k to buy her this ring, and the other is in Target paper, and she thinks, wow, he really skimped. He doesn't value me. I'm going to have to either slap him or say, honey, come back again next week with a Tiffany or something respectable. It may not give the same emotional response because emotion precedes decision in many cases, and deciding to buy from you, accepting what you're offering. Have you compelled them to address this issue and make them want you and what you're offering? And the heavy positive emotion with Tiffany for a woman that knows what the difference is. Now, if you're up in Alaska out there and you're an Eskimo and all you're worried about is finding whale blubber, this scenario may not apply. You know, it might be in a whale blubber box of value. But in most people in cities or in civilization are going to understand that metaphor.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right. So let's just say that we decide to go for it. We want to be a public speaker. I want to
Yep.
build my persona. I want to build my brand. How can we do that? How can we build a strong persona and a brand? Because I know, again, it's competitive, and as you mentioned, right, people have a lot of options of going to contract with to have come and speak.
Let's go back to the plumage. Okay, and I'll tell this story. Well, I was attending a big conference in Singapore probably 6 months before the pandemic took hold. And there were meeting planners, booking agents for big speakers bureaus. One came from Shanghai, one was Hong Kong based, and one was Singaporean. 3 women, Chinese ladies, or Chinese descent, I should say. One was only Chinese, actually. One was Singaporean, and one was from Hong Kong. 3 women, professional, intelligent, and the question I'll never forget, what do you look for when you book a speaker? Number 1, does he have a book? Does she have a book? Number 2, proof of them speaking. Are there clips of them speaking to an audience? And that's where YouTube comes into play. Do they have all the branding elements? Because what they have to do is walk in with a packet to the board and say, we want to book Brett Ingram for our national sales conference that's coming up with 5,000 of our high producers from around the world. We need a speaker that can motivate, is credible, and will help and will make us look good with the selection of the speaker. Do you think they're going to take their reputation and their job and put it on the line if you aren't a proven entity, if they have no experience and haven't seen you in person? No. They're going to go to your YouTube channel and see clips. They're going to look at your testimonials from past events. They're going to look at your one sheet. Where have you been? Have you been interviewed in the media or not? Do you have articles out there in the media or not? Do you have a book or books written about the topic that you're being hired for or not? If you don't have those box ticked, okay, they may be in a spot by someone referred you and said, yes, Brett's great. However, he doesn't have these assets. They may take a risk on you, but do you think when it comes to fee negotiation, you're going to be at the high end or the low end of their range?
Obviously low end, because they're looking at it almost like they're doing you the favor instead of the other way around.
Bingo. Whereas you are in the driver's seat when they are looking at three speakers, who's got the best looking feathers? Because the job of a meeting planner is not to find the best speaker. The job of the media booking agent in a television station is not finding the best guest for the episode. Let me share what's going on with them emotionally, because I work inside a studio.
Yeah,
Their number one job, Brett, their number one feeling, I'm talking emotion and feeling, is saving their job.
Yeah.
And that's their interest. Will this person put me at risk? So they're in a risk avoidance stance first. Then, will I be embarrassed? Will I receive an attagirl or an attaboy from my boss? Or will I be fired by bringing in somebody that embarrassed me, embarrassed the show host, embarrassed the CEO, bringing in a crappy speaker or a guest on a show who isn't prepared, who doesn't know the audience, who has no credibility? Am I willing to risk my job? Number one. Number two, will the audience receive this person well? Will they dispense value to the audience? That's their second thought. First is, will I get fired or not? Will I keep my...
That's fascinating. I mean, but not surprising, because even when you see movies or things about that side of the industry, you see these people running around with sort of this fear mentality of trying to make sure that everything's done and that they're not messing up anywhere or making any mistakes or making anybody look bad, especially any of the public facing people. So is there a pattern? Is there a strategy for the order of events? If I'm somebody who doesn't have a book and I don't have network TV experience or any of these other things, but that's where I want to go. Is there a certain track to run on or an order of events that I should be focused on?
Absolutely. And I would say, and you need your social media intact. At one time, but what didn't matter, you got to create a one sheet. What are you going to talk about? And then you create a plan, Brett. I mean, let's take an example of you. I mean, you've already got a show. You've already developed that credibility. And I don't know what your topics are necessarily. We're just meeting and getting to know each other. But I'm going to use you as an example. I would say,
Sure.
Write a book. Now, is it something that you're passionate about and have knowledge about? So that's a broad, deep dive. That's a good start. I don't know what you mentioned. You've been in internet marketing. You've been digital marketing for years. You probably know a lot about SEO, pay-per-click. You may know about funnels. You might know about optimization. You know about creating an avatar. To name a few, or affiliate marketing. Pick one of those modalities, or you could create books on all of them that are just 10,000 words. That is the Brett Ingram series, Through Brett's Eyes. you can probably, with all the years of experience that you worked on how to create software that matches the market, that could be a series of 6 books that you could write. They're simply 10,000 words. They're short books, but it celebrates you as an expert having all of that direct experience. I would discourage writing about birthing a baby. That's for a woman to write about, who identifies as a woman. I don't want to get into the pronoun discussion. You get the idea. The ability to birth a woman or birth a baby would fall into a mother. Talk about the topic that you understand and might be passionate about. I'm not going to write about software development. I don't have expertise in that. I could talk about a few of those other topics, but that's what I would suggest strongly for you, given the discussion of your background. I think you could probably write off the top of your head competently, if I were to ask the right questions, enough about each of those to where you would have a firm outline today. That would be step 1, getting books done. Then if you have this series of books, you could solicit the local newspaper in the city that you're in. I'm sure you have a rag today. We both were paper boys, but you might, Brett, have a local newspaper in your market. So what I would do is approach that newspaper and say, hey, look, I have a 15-year career in digital marketing, and I know about affiliate marketing, I know about software, I know about PPC, SEO, SEM, funnels, podcast expertise, and finding the right guests, all of these modalities that are in these are part of your feathers, these competencies. I would like to write a monthly or a weekly column, and I won't charge anything. Free contribution to the community because I'm part of this community, and I want to educate the older people who are still reading the newspaper so they have a comfortable understanding of today's terms and where the market's moving. They're going to say yes. Now you use those writings that you've provided to the local newspapers, and once you have about 10 articles written, you then show those as reading or written samples to submit to Forbes, Entrepreneur Press, Harper's, all the different larger publications that are in your niche that make sense. Because you've already proven yourself. Again, they don't want to risk writing an article about somebody or taking submissions from somebody who's in there. And you could leverage, hey, I write and I've had great response. Readership has gone up. I've created a community of followers in my local community. And you may find a contributor that works for Forbes in your category, and then you send these articles. Here are some samples of my writing, and this might be helpful when you, according to your media calendar, you're talking about digital marketing in November. And you find that it's Judy Jones. She's a contributor for that category, one of the contributors. She might reference you. I got this from Brett Ingram because she knows protocol. And that's how you get exposure into the bigger. And then you submit content to her. And after a while, she might open the door for you to become a contributor yourself. Medium is another platform. The list goes on. But that's how I would start out. And then, I also have a book on the topic. That is totally media worthy. Because media will be interested in you if you are interesting.
Okay.
In order for them to be interested in you, you have to have feathers that prove that you're interesting. Make sense?
Yeah, very. It's a great explanation, and I think it's really valuable because I know there's a lot of people out there, and they sort of try to decide, well, what do I do? Like, do I build up my social media? Do I write a book? Do I do this? Do I do that? And the fact of the matter is, I think like with a lot of things, right? It's an incremental process about trying to get, you don't start by hitting the home run. You You
No.
start by learning how to swing the bat. You hit the ball a little bit, make a few outs, then you get a couple of singles. Before you know it, you're hitting the ball, fly balls deep into the outfield, and eventually you get there. So it's like learning anything else or, any other sort of skill or pathway that you have to follow.
You got to
So,
swing the bat. You got to swing the
yeah,
bat. If you don't swing the bat, you can't get a hit. You can't even strike out because you haven't done anything. You got to step into the batter's box.
yeah,
You got to
yeah,
swing
no,
the Louis.
that's right. Swing the Louis. All right. So I've been holding on to this question, but I have to ask. I saw the movie Joy with Jennifer Lawrence. So what is it actually like being a pitchman on Home Shopping Network?
I'll have to watch that movie. What was it called?
Oh, you didn't see it? It's called
No.
Joy. I think she plays
Oh,
the
I did see it.
inventor.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
I
of
did see it.
the ring out
Oh,
mop.
oh, yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
she
And I knew the
bombs the
people.
first time and then has to come back.
Oh, I bombed my first time on Home Shopping Network. I was selling a product and they test you in the middle of the night. I was so bloody nervous because it was 5 million viewers. This was 1996. And yes, I did see that show. I was okay. Oh, yes. And I related to so much. So much. Yes. It was incredibly nerve-wracking and gratifying once I failed my way to success. Once I worked through the fear, which is face everything and rise, face that fear, work through the fear, work through the vomit of me going into the toilet and throwing up because I was so nervous. I have to say, so nervous, Brett, because 5 million people were watching me.
Yeah.
5 million. That's how, I don't think it's as big today as it was back in the 90s. But I did that, worked through it, and by the fourth time, because that's how they test you, they give you 4 slots of about 10 minutes, and my numbers started to improve. And then I was off to the races. And it was nerve-wracking, but that's the Super Bowl of selling.
Yeah. Well, that was the impression I got because that was my first behind the scenes look at it.
Yep.
And it's funny because I see the parallel, right, with the talk show that you're talking about. The person's job who's booking the people to come on to sell, they don't want to get fired. They got to bring people on that are going to be able to sell products. Because if they bring somebody on, they have a giant audience and they had 100 people they could have chose from. They pick somebody who bombs. That's obviously not going to look good. So it makes sense they start you in the middle of the night and all that kind of stuff for sure. But that's cool. That's a great story. I can't even imagine the stress of that. But
Oh man, I had to get new internal organs. It was so cathartic. If I go back to that time in 1996, now I had already been a speaker. I'd produced infomercials, but to sell in front of 5 million people on live TV, not recorded, live, Brett,
yeah,
that was tough. I mean, I've spoken in an arena with 40,000 people. That was easier than knowing 5 million people,
amazing.
Betty's sitting on their couches all across America, were watching me.
That is amazing. Amazing. But yeah, you just never know. But again, you got better at it because you tried it, you didn't give up and you kept going, which I think is super important. All right. So where can people find your products, find your services, connect with you?
If they want, if I'm a publicist here in Las Vegas, so what I provide, and it's not a pitch, it's just sharing what I do. If they want to get on network television here in Las Vegas, I provide a service where I guarantee them in 2 days 4 TV station interviews on live TV. And if they're interested, go to getinterviewedguaranteed.com/meet with Mitch. It'll be in the show notes. I know we'll get this up here quickly. And that's where they can book a 30-minute call with me. We can go through their media plan and see if that's what makes sense for you. And if it does, great. If not, you want to follow some of my articles, and I'm on LinkedIn, Mitch Carson Official, and also my site, mitchcarson.com, which is where I
Awesome.
post my blog articles on there. And I also have a channel on YouTube. So I practice what I preach. Don't look for me on TikTok. You don't want to see me dance. It's an ugly sight. It's pretty scary, Brett. And I'll scare every woman in the world from Dancing with Me again. I have no rhythm.
You're not alone. Guilty as charged. I don't. You won't find me in TikTok videos doing that kind of stuff. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's perfect. Thanks a lot for that. So, all right, I have one last question to ask because I
Sure.
think it's important, and I'm always curious to know what everyone's going to say. What's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Believe in yourself. May sound a little bit cliche. Believe in yourself. And how do I set the stage for believing in myself? I follow some rituals daily. I always make my bed. I always meditate every day. Some people will find power in prayer. For me, it's meditation. Meditation is my medication. That sets my mind right. And I meditate for about 5 minutes, focusing what I'm going to accomplish today. So I have a better chance of success by focusing on it, repeating it, seeing it, and achieving it.
It's great advice. All right, with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Mitch, for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit getinterviewedguaranteed.com/meet with Mitch for a 30-minute one-on-one call with Mitch to discuss your media and exposure possibilities. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And as always, remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.